Before I go to my guest, I'd like to ask Alelo to put up a slide that shows the funding initiatives that the legislature has been engaged in from May through June. And as that's going up, I apologize if it's small print, but what I really wanted to share with our viewers is that the legislatures, lawmakers, executives across the state have been very concerned about providing immediate relief and also positioning our economy for recovery. So in May, I wanted to share with you, over $500 million went to the counties from the CARES funds to really address some of these immediate relief needs. And it was great to see the counties take the effort to make sure that these funds were getting out to the community in the form of food relief, rental assistance, small business. I wanted to share with our viewers that in June, just recently, the legislature passed our CARES funding initiative and really took the time to see how we could support the community, not just in the immediate months, but in the months going forward, all the way through the end of this year, when the CARES funds are going to have to be expended by. There were three big buckets that I wanted to share with the community as to what we funded. Those were immediate relief. We put over $400 million towards unemployment support as well as rental assistance, a public health response, because we know our small businesses, facilities are going to still need PPE, and we need testing and screening at the airports. That over $200 million went towards that effort. And then over $56 million have been put towards moving Hawaii forward and positioning our small businesses, putting out money for job works programs as well as manufacturing grants to help our small businesses. I wanted to share this with you because as I bring on our next guest, these are my colleagues, Representative Lynn DeCoite and Kyle Yamashita from the awesome county of Maui, representing the islands of Maui, Kaho'olawe, Lanai, and Molokai. Welcome, Kyle and Lynn, are you there?
Hi, morning, Della. Morning.
So it's been kind of a marathon, and we're in the final stretch of session. I just shared with our viewers some of the initiatives that we've put forward in the CARES funding, but I really wanted to kind of focus in on some of the concerns of your communities of the islands of Maui, Molokai, and Lanai. And I know that top of mind, and I'm going to share with our viewers this news. We've been struggling with the issues of young brothers and what we can do to ensure the critical services and the flow of goods between the islands. I wanted to get from your perspective, because as we've seen the bill stall out, as described in that article that I just flashed, can you share with our viewers why is Young Brothers and the services they provide so important to your islands? And then let's just talk a little bit about what might happen in the coming months. I'll turn to Kyle and then Lynn.
Okay, thank you, Della. I think the legislature in general had concerns about if we just gave out money that there was no guarantee that they would continue, or because they were in trouble pre-COVID. So we've got to kind of look at the mechanism or how they're operating, because right now it seems like subsidy ongoing probably is not a good sustainable way to operate. So one of the things that I believe is that we got to kind of relook at the structure of how we operate. So the expensive part is the LCL, and to some degree, some of the other moving cattle and agriculture and those types of things. The example I give people is that if you look at like inter-island flying, right, Hawaiian Air, when they fly to Molokai, Lanai, and Hana, or the places where maybe there's fewer passengers and things, they came up with a different model. So they came up with Ohana by Hawaiian, which is a prop plane, cheaper to operate. Landing fees are cheaper. There are, they renegotiated with the pilots and the flight attendants so that they could adjust their scales and things like that. And so they brought costs down. And so it was easy to operate in those areas. I think Young Brothers, for these types of things, we got to kind of look at that as maybe options. What that is, I'm not sure, because that's not my business. But I point to what Hawaiian Air did only because I think that's something similar, right? There's not enough scale to fly to these areas, to provide services for these areas. So we got to come up with a different model to service them. And, we, in general, the neighbor islands, we're an island state. So those are our challenges, that other states don't have. So, we got to look at, unfortunately, Maritime doesn't really have any kind of federal subsidy that we can find immediately. But I think maybe, we need to look. I think there's always a possibility that there's something that we can look to. But we got to look at everything. And I think that's why the legislature decided to pause right now and see what else we can, have more conversations and see what we can come up with.
I think that notion of a pause is really important, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But Lynn, I wanted to hear from you, like, why is Young Brothers and the services they provide so important to your islands? And I think you're the only representative that has a canoe district, really.
First of all, thank you, Della. Thank you, Kyle. It's very essential, as you folks know. It's the only water carrier to Molokai that can actually bring our food, our cars, vehicles, an island that does agriculture, tractors, and so forth. While there are, boats that do go back and forth to Maui and do shopping and so forth, you're talking about equipment, generators, other things, public utilities with the electric company, those kinds of stuff that you cannot put an electric pole on. You need this carrier. You need the bare essential services, which is what Young Brother provides. But, as we looked at this in the beginning of last year, and I've had this conversation, I introduced House Bill 2475. I saw it coming. We knew that YB was already in trouble. I agree with what Rep. Yamashita has said. We really got to look at how the operations of any business goes, because we're responsible for taxpayer dollars on how we go about using that, first and foremost. My big issue with this is, as we start off with something, again, we talk about sustainable. That word is the buzzword. It's always being used. And, we have to sustain ourselves. We were at one time talking about, it was proposed by, some people that, we need to have our own voice. We need to be our own county. And how can you be on county with one not even being able to have essential services or sustain yourself on an island? Such as Molokai, I would take, for example. We depend on the people of Honolulu, the people of Maui, to help subsidize the bulk of what we have and those essential services. And really, that's what the bill is asking for, that we need help. We continue to need help, as Rep. Yamashita said, with Hawaiian and Ohana, them trying to accommodate us. In the process of that accommodation, we do get the backlash. We might have rough seas. There are certain things that YB is not able to do. And as most of us know, the new tugs that they bought was not made for Hawaiian waters. And they've had challenges coming in there. But without these services there, it's going to be really hard for people to have their things delivered. And as we see a lot of what Senate Bill 1427 brought, it was, legislature coming forward and saying, hey, this is something I think we could look at. It also allowed a voice for the livestock guys to be part of the decision making. They had their challenges, our cattle guys who truly have worked their butts off and tried to sustain themselves. At the same time, when we saw testimony come in, some of the testimony that came, and I thought, and like Rep. Yamashita said, we have to talk about this, because you're not going to have the cake with the frosting and everything. But we have our workers there. We talked about minimum wage increases. We know that, there was a wage increase, or should I say a charge increase that YB was pushing for. Well, we talk about minimum wage, and, we want our people and our employees here to have a good wage. And then we get people bucking them. So, they work hard. I've been on the ports. I do my own deliveries when I'm able to do it. And I see what LCLs. The bill that we have before us provides the LCLs, provides the same shipping schedules originally before pre-COVID-19 and during COVID-19, as they try to accommodate, try to cut. Well, some of the stuff just never work out at all. And at the same time, as we've had conversation, we got to make sure that I do not want to see another carrier come in and not pick up the workforce that is there. And that's what we've been challenging. We get carriers come in, but I cannot see one carrier coming in at this time. So I've asked that, we continue with the bill. Since the bill has stalled, we got to have this conversation, because you cut this lifeline off. It won't be only cut off to Molokai and Lanai. It will be cut off for the entire state, Hilo, Kauai, Maui, the Big Island. The bill as we have before us that stalled is the Molokai, Lanai. And I'm going to be real clear. It's Molokai, Honolulu, Lanai, Honolulu, back and forth, Molokai, Maui, back and forth. It won't do the routes of a Maui, Honolulu route. And those are the biggest areas that have LCLs. Now, keep in mind that LCLs is there because of the little guys, the small mom and pop stores. You push this and take out the LCLs, you'll now be paying huge amounts if you cannot fill the container. And that was our challenges from the beginning. LCLs is not a thing, it's not new. LCLs was talked about in the time of Glenn Hong some 15, 20 years ago. And we fought LCLs back then to protect the small businesses and mom and pop stores. So, I believe that we've got to continue to have the conversation. It ain't over till session is over. And, I look towards my colleagues to and leadership and governor to come up with a solution that will meet the needs of everybody. And at the same time, but I'm fine to home, we have to have YB sit down, because I always believe that projections and fiscal implications are huge, but I like to look at the tax returns part of it and the tax filings. I think that's where we can go line item by line item and say, this is what I know we can live without, and this is what we can. And the other issue that we were faced with was that the transfer of this to go to the DOT, the comment was made that, we wouldn't have a proper vetting. And I believe we would, because then that proper vetting would be the legislature and we're talking rate increases. It would have to come back. And so that's where I'm going to leave it. And but thank you. And that's where I believe we should look at, is continuing this conversation.
I really appreciate you folks kind of fleshing out what all the issues are, because, we're often criticized as the legislature, or we're just going to push something through. But this clearly is an issue or matters of great import for so many parts of our state, that we have to let the conversation continue and not just force any kind of compromise on anyone. I think, I hope this is a session that will come to an end, that we may have to deal with this in the future in other ways, but I know that the conversation will continue. I'd like to end, we're almost near our end, but I wanted to give you folks some time just to talk about something, the CARES initiative, what's happening in your community. One last thing about anything that you might have on economic recovery. 30 seconds for you, Rep Yamashita, 30 seconds for you, Lynn, if you want to say anything about what's happening or what you would like to see happen as we move forward through December.
Yeah, I think in general, the CARES Act and the budget had a lot of things that supported our communities. We had the $66 million that went to Maui County in the CARES Act, and we're kind of talking with them to see how we can best use that money. I know that's their kuleana, but at the same time, I think we are a team and we need to work together. There was also the $19 million that we gave in the budget to the Maui Hospital, which was very, very important. That was their original ask. I think the governor's budget had 17, the House put 18, and we went back to the original. They're still, because of their challenges with doing services that actually used to generate revenue for them. They were challenged during March through basically now, so they lost a lot of revenue. So we're still trying to figure out how we're going to fill that gap. That's going to be a challenge. In general, I think there are things that I'm working on to kind of look at, all these things with brought to light the importance of how the federal government can help us. And there are things because of the way we are set up, where we are a very centralized state, and where we do not get certain funds from the federal government, just because they normally go to the counties, and because the counties don't do schools, community hospital, jails, traffic court, an ambulance service, we miss out on some of this federal subsidy because the money has to go to the counties. So we're looking at creating something else to be able to access those types of monies that sometimes they're grants. You know, they're cheap loans, but sometimes they're grants. So we're looking at those types of options. I think we got to look at everything right now. It's going to be challenging times going forward. So, thank you, Della.
Thank you, Kyle. Lynn, last 30 seconds for you.
Real quick, ditto to what Kyle said. Basically that's what it is. Mine is more so on the areas of isolation on the Medicare. Our health services especially like HANA, they get the biggest amount of tourists going in. I appreciated Eddie being on here because I got to talk more at Eddie. How the CARES funding can be used to help HANA health centers to make sure, we're opening up. I said I'm not too happy, but they're opening up, and I want to make sure that they have the needed service. They are a project that's shovel ready to go. At the same time, they're tasked with dealing with tourists coming in there and taking care of the basic needs of the residents in there. Our Lanai areas, also the Kinaoles. We've had our problems with other entities and their home care facilities, but I'm trying to figure out how do we get funding so that they can continue the home care services outside of where they are today and the HANA health systems that they desperately need the help because they got to deal with the tourists that come in there, and we got to somehow get funding and services to them. But other than that, continue to work hard. I hope this session eventually ends, but, grateful, Della, to you, Della, and Kyle, my colleagues, for, helping support my Canoe district of District 13, and as well as the state. So thank you for having me on today.
Thank you so much. It is so important for us to have these kind of conversations. I want to thank Kyle and Lynn for joining me. I want to thank Eddie Mercero for joining us earlier. As I always do on this show, it's more important than ever that we stay connected and informed during these uncertain times. If you're new to the show, please follow the House Majority on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at High House Dems for most recent updates and future episodes. You can also visit our website at hawaiihousedemocrats.com, which has resources and valuable information on how the House Majority is responding to COVID-19. Please, please, please stay safe, stay healthy and informed. Have a great 4th of July weekend, but stay safe. And we'll see you next Wednesday to talk story with House Majority. Aloha.
Aloha. Thank you.